Hello all. Mm, I'm able to just get into this thing, but good afternoon, Issy. Mm, let's wait 5 more minutes to start the class. Okay. Good afternoon, Viral Bank. So let's start in 5 minutes. Good afternoon, good afternoon. NxtWave boys. Sir, start project, sir. We are getting opportunity, but no project on React hook, sir. If you don't understand this point of React at this given point of time, just going to React. It's just wasting your time. Learn how the hook's actually being working, then you can just go ahead and start working on the project itself. You have to know where to use the hook, why to use the hook. How to install npm Saipan, you can just google it. It's just easy, just one single command. Yes, Vijay Kumar, it's cricket day. Good afternoon, Deepak. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm. Okay, how many people have joined it? 26. Okay. Uh, we'll wait 2 more minutes, 3 more minutes. Mm. How can we push without? Okay, next week, boys. Why do you want, or why you are not comfortable using command lines to push the code? May I know the reason? Good afternoon, Shivshankar. Good afternoon, everyone. So we'll start our session. Good afternoon, everyone. So can anyone tell me what we have studied in the previous session so that we can continue our session? Figma is used to give UX and UI design. So Figma is a software that helps us to create wireframes for any given website. Yes, that's the thing that we actually do. Yes, we have seen what is meant by bundler, what are the use cases of bundler, what is meant by HMR, which is nothing but hot module or replacement. And what are the other things that we have learned? We have created a to-do application. Apart from that, what we have done? We have learned bit and its usage. Right. We have also seen how do we actually process with the building of any given application using React. Right. We have this 4 steps where we have finished our 2 steps. We have these 4 steps that we actually follow while building any React application. We have completed the 2. The first 2, yes, we are done with it. We are done with it. Yes. Yes. Anyone have any kind of a doubt? What had happened in this session? Like we have also discussed about the structure of any given React application. What is package.json, package log.json? What is the difference between package.json and package log.json? At the same time, we also learn about this particular thing known as the public element, the source element where the important files are present, and how the difference between this render and create route has been changed from React 17 to React 18. So anyone has any doubt in previous session? Yes, we have about to learn about what is meant by npm and npx. So if you have any kind of a doubt, you can ask me. If no, let's tell me go ahead. We'll go ahead and let's try to understand our 2D application more. And also in this session, we also learn about how do we refactor our code and how do we use React developer tools, and also we learn about what is meant by use effect hook. What is the intuition of use effect hook and sort of a thing. So these are the fundamental hooks and the stuff. Vanshdeep, it is for the basic comfortability of developer. That's why I'm using JSX. Sorry. Yes. So in the previous session, so let's try to run the code. The code is npm run dev. Execute it. Okay, this error. Okay, sorry. We need to go to. So once then we can say npm run dev, run the code. Your particular developer application or this to do or React application is being run, is running. So we will do this thing. Yes, this is our React application. So I'll try to zoom a bit. Yes, now everything is fine. So let's say if I want to say go to gym and if I click on this add task, it is actually happening. And if say go to gym again, yes, it is actually happening and it's actually working. Let's try to change our application from Vite plus React to some other thing. So for which I just go to this particular thing known as index.html and I see this particular. I'll remove it. Instead of Vite plus React, I'll say it is as to-do application. To app. So Yes, now we are in this current position. Let's check what are the changes that I had made. Yes, this is a to-do application. This is a to-do application that's currently working. Now we have done these two things where we created our static web page and we also figured out where to add dynamic nature to our web page, which is nothing but when we are saying this dynamic nature that need to be added to any given web page, we are telling about the thing known as adding state to them. So we have did it successfully in this given above application. But the one important thing I just want to tell, or the third thing is, we need to actually divide the code into components if possible, which is nothing but, as at this given point of time our code is around 30 lines or 40 lines of the code, but as if you want to make more improvements into this given 2D application, then we need to actually divide this entire code into two parts. Now let's figure out what are the two parts that are actually present in this given particular, wait a minute, in this given particular thing is, open this Excel draft, yeah, in this given particular application. If you say that we have our entire application, the to-do application, this is nothing but the to-do application, so for which we can clearly say this is to-do, this is the to-do application where it has two elements, one is the input box, the input development, where we have where we have an input bar altogether, and also a circle, I mean a button. To be more precise, this is a button. So this is the input bar. Now whenever we click this button, this input will actually landed or added to this given particular page, given particular list element. So this particular list element is having few items, like one, I'll say this is of 2, this is of 3. So where this thing is actually input element or our input box, I'll say input. But if you observe, these two elements are actually present inside this one single element, which is our to-do application. You might be thinking, sir, everything is actually working fine. Then why we need to divide them into two components? The first foremost reason is, when are these two components which has a scope of getting scaled up, then they should not be present in one single component, which is nothing but the first reason. I'll write it here, or I'll write it here, which is nothing but, so I'll share it. One reason or primary reason where if we have a component which has a scope to increase its scale, then we need to separate those components. Like here in this given example, we have both lists and input elements, or I'll say components, can be scaled up. So that's the reason we are dividing them into different components. Now the fundamental reason why I'm telling that these have more scope of increase is that in this given one single input element, we can add lot more features. We can add filter button, we can also add many other things in this given one single input element. But coming back to this point of this list, as long as we add number of to-dos into this list, it has been continuously increasing its scale. That's why in the moment of the scale, or I can also tell that, or I'll say components, or we can also tell in this format that what, you know, in order to scale, we need to focus on these components separately. So that's the reason we are dividing them into components. Dividing. Now, try to understand how can we divide these components, because let's say there are there are two state variables. In the entire given particular thing, we have only two state variables. The first state variable that we are actually in the given application is that, if you observe, the first state variable is regarding with this input box where it is known as input value. So this is the first state variable, that input value is one such a state variable where we are actually declaring in this given particular code. And the second thing is, the second value is, if you go and observe the code, we have this task element, or we can clearly say this task array is actually the element that is actually a state variable, task array. So these input value and task array are the both two different state variables that are actually present inside of our given code. Now, if you observe these two are the state variables, then let's figure out which variable, because which state variable needs to be present with which of these component, which is nothing but input value should always be present with, or input state variable should always be present with input, this particular input component or input box component. Whereas if you observe this task array is one such a component where it should be actually present, or it should be actually needed by both of these elements, which is nothing but this looks, or this in this tree representation, because DOM is actually the representation that is actually takes place in tree format. So we'll say this is one application where we have our to do thing, and also we have this one thing. Now this is nothing but this input element, and this given particular thing is actually known as your list element or list component. Now this particular parent application is nothing but your to do application. Your to do application. Now your entire to do application is having two components like this. Both are children. Into input value is one input value, not input box. I'll say input box. Input box is one such a variable that is actually present as an element for this to do component, and also same with the list. But if you observe, both input box and list are nothing but are a small children's of this given particular one component to do, right? So is this point clear, everyone? Yes, Vanshdeep, increasing the scale is nothing but increasing, because the input box can also add multiple features in it, filtering the elements, and also making sure including something known as in a relevancy to this given particular topic. We can do many such things. Similarly, for this to-do list also, as long as we add the tasks, the list is going bigger and bigger. So this is what meant by scalability. So there is a chance or scope that these two components can grow up to a very big size. So that's the reason I have just divided them into two components. But how do we divide it is the point that we have, I know that we are discussing. But at this point of time, do you understand this particular relationship between the parent and the child? Parent is nothing but the to do component, and child is nothing but the your input box and list component. So till this point, if this everything is clear, then we can go ahead, because it's very fundamental concept. We need to have 100% focus to understand this. If you have any notes, you can ask me in the chat. Otherwise, tell me, go ahead. Clear, go ahead. Okay. Now, let's say, let's take this normal example in order to understand these particular things, because input value is one such a particular state variable that will be actually given to this particular one single component input box. So input value is one such state variable that is actually given to this particular input box. That's clear. Now, coming to this task array, this is also a state variable, but out of two children, which one will get this task array as a property? Or which of these particular components, because till this point we have all this task array and this input value is actually shared by these both of these two elements. But when we are dividing them, we should actually deal to whom we should give this particular state variable. So for that, the one reason, when you are at the given place where one state variable is actually needed by many child components, then what is the format that we need to check? Is that check whether this task array is actually used by this both input box element and list element. Go to the code. Go to the code where we have our input element, where we are handling input, and we are actually storing this particular e.target.value to this input value, to this input value, to this input value. That is the one thing that is happening. And also, if you observe this task array or new task array or this task array is one such a state variable that is actually utilized by this add task thing. Now coming to this add task, it is actually present on the button. It is actually present on the button, which is nothing but, if you observe this component where this input box element has the input bar and the button, you might be thinking that this state array or this task array, which is a state variable, will only be including, or will only be divided with this, or will only be included in the component of this input box. But that's not the case, because even the input box element or component and also the list component, because whatever we are actually adding to this task, or it is actually added to this given particular array, which is nothing but task array is one such a state variable that is actually being utilized by this input. Whenever we click on button, we are nothing but we are adding the input value into this particular task array. And also, if you observe, this is the same task array is actually utilized by this list component, right, to render them onto the screen, So here task array is one such a state variable that is needed for both input box and list element or list component. Like, there is this one case, let's say a parent has two children where each of them wants same chocolate, and they are quarreling between each of two of them. Now how does the father will handle is that, let's say this task, like if we give this chocolate or this task array for this given particular input box element or component, then list will be felt betrayed. If we give this particular thing of task array state variable to list or list component, it will be betraying this input box element. That's why this task array, which is actually needed for both of these child elements of to do, is actually kept with the parent element to do itself. So why? Because whenever this input box needs this particular task array state variable, it will be sending through the name of props. Let's scroll it down. Yes. This is what, whenever this parent element needs to send this given particular task array, it sends to both of these particular elements in the form of props. That is the major thing that we have observed. That is the major thing that we have observed in the props thing. Whenever we are building any kind of a props, it is nothing but we are actually sending, if the parent has that element or the state variable, we are actually sending that state variable, this task array, as props to the child elements. That is the thing that we follow at this given point of time. So till this point, everyone is clear? If you have any kind of doubt, I'll explain it. I'll explain it again, because this is the fundamental point you must understand. Because as ever, whenever you build any React application, same rules, the fundamental rules, you need to be very clear with. So that's why I'm asking. If everything is clear, we can go ahead. So if you have any kind of a doubt, you can tell me there is a doubt. Otherwise, you tell me go ahead, I'll go ahead. Summarize once again. Yes. If you observe this particular to-do application where it has two children elements, input box and list, go to the code, you will observe it. Where we have this particular thing, input box is one such a component. Sorry. Input box is one such an element and list is another element. Where this is actually consisted, or it is present inside this to-do element, to-do component itself. Now, when we want to divide this input box and list into two different separate components, because we need to increase the scalability of each component, then we actually need to divide these state variables also between both of them. So the input value is one such a state variable that is present in the code, is actually needed by only this one single element. But if you observe, this task array is another state element that is actually required by both input box and React. If you want to have a look, go to the code and see, whenever there is an add task button, whenever there is an on click event, we are actually including or using this input value to this new task, using this new task. So wait, small glitch. So let's try to run the code again. Npm run dev. Okay, there's an unexpected token. What is it, unexpected token? Counts new task. Unexpected token. Where is the token? Okay. Add task. Go to this particular thing. We have this thing. Go very down. We have this code. We have things actually working. So yeah. Now if you observe this both input box and this list element, where we have this particular add task, in this given add task, we are actually working with this task array or task ARR state variable. So this input box also needed this particular, this particular state variable task array. And by default, if you observe this list component, where we are actually rendering this task array onto the screen itself. So that's why we actually also need this particular task array state variable by this given component of list. So that's why here both the children elements need to have the same task array, state variable. So in order to make it you know safe, we actually keep this task array with the parent element, and if any of these children component needs this particular state variable, we send this state variable in the form of props to them, so till this point we are done. I'll tell you what is the key, do not worry about it. So is this point done? So if we are done with this given point, tell me, sir, go ahead, we'll go ahead. Go ahead. Okay, Shivashankar, waiting for response from others also. Because once you understand it, it's easy that we can refactor our code. It's very simple. I think so. Yes, 26 people are still there. Go ahead. Let's go ahead. Now, in order to make it right, so I'll be saying that, let's say, okay, everything is fine. So I'll create these two components at bottom of this given page. Where we have this function app. Similarly, we have, let's say there is this one extension that I want everyone to install, is that this particular thing, ES7 plus React Redux and sort of thing. Please install this given particular extension in the VS Code. So I have installed it, so you also install it. Now we have this one single thing where I'll say there is this one shortcut to create any React component, RFC. In case this React component has been created, where this is nothing but input box. This is one such single element. Yeah. Apart from this, let's see. So where we can say that this given input box is actually being utilized. Now yes. Okay, this thing will be rendered. So instead of telling this thing, I'll say remove it. Now inside this given input box, we'll actually include our state variables, where instead I'll copy this code of input box, this input box thing, where I'll cut it inside this div element. Inside this div element, I'll paste it. And we also go for this particular thing where I'll remove this import React from React. We already have that thing. So wait, where we need to take away this particular thing, because this given particular variable should actually be present with this particular input box item itself. So I'll paste it, and anything that we need to say, handle input. I also copy it, go back to this particular thing of code, and I'll say handle input. So yes, and also whenever there is this click button, which is nothing but here we also have this another component the simple another component which is nothing but the list here. So instead input is actually nothing but a box itself. So I'll say input box. I'll use the same input box as a component inside it. So I'll use it where for this given input box element I'll be sending this particular component. I can say that where we say add task is one such a thing, or else instead wait, these are this input box element. Now we have to create another element that is actually known as RFC, where I'll say list. Where we have this list element. If you observe this given particular list element, I'd be using this particular component list, the above component list. I'll copy paste it. So I'll copy paste this list element. Where is this list? This is the list. This is the list. So I'll say that remove this line. So I'll remove this line also, where inside this given list, where we can, or instead I'll paste this. Now this is the list element where we have our code. So I'll say here this list is one such a component that should be present by these particular thing, but apart from these we also need to have some small changes, which is nothing but this list array actually needs this particular task array, right? Task array variable where I have our task array with the parent element or with the, application element with the to do thing. So I'll send it for this particular element as in this way, which is nothing but I'll say for this thing we have one prop task array where I'm sending a prop for this given particular element or task array with this simple thing known as task array. So here I am sending this task array state variable from the parent to the children in the form of props. So that's why I just go down here, I'll get the props, insert the given props, where I'll say that this given particular small thing, once we receive this kind of a props, I'll say const task arr something what this thing, I'll say this is props, this is props. So we are getting here the prop is nothing but this task array. That's why I'm actually releasing and storing that prop value into this particular array, and I'm using that same array to render the things. Now coming to the interesting part. So we have this one thing where input box is one element. When it says go to this input box to understand it clearly, input box, when there is this handle input, when we can clearly say there is an on click event on this given button element, on this given button element itself, then we need to add task, which is nothing but this input box where the task array should be implemented, which is nothing but when there is an on click event. I'll show it. There is a button, so this is on click. When there is an on click event, then eventually this on click event should update the task array, should update the task array, should update the task array, right? But if you observe, this on click is actually having inside this particular component of input box, but this task array is actually present with to do application or the parent application. Now how can we communicate from children to parent? This is a children element and this is a parent element. So in React, whenever a parent need to communicate to the children, whenever a parent need to communicate the children, it actually does in the form of props. But when our children need to communicate to the parent, it should happen in the format of functions. It should happen in the format of callbacks. It should happen in the format of callbacks. So now it is nothing but we actually use this callback in input box element, where we send input box element, or we send this given particular function. Wait a minute. We send this given particular function add task to this given particular element itself, which is nothing but I'll say till this given point, I'll say add task is one such a particular element or a function that we have inside the parent element. So I'll send add task as a prop to it. So I'll say add task, which I'll be sending as a prop to this particular input box. So which is nothing but this input box will actually receive this props. Once it actually receives this props, which is nothing but when there is this thing known as an on click, I'll do in this format, where I'll say const add task is actually equals to the value of a function, where I'll say props. When there is an on click event actually happens, then I want to call this particular thing add task value with this input value, which is nothing but when there is a click happens, on this given button, we need to send the data. From input element to parent element or to do element, to the app or to do element, using a function. That's what we are actually doing here. Also, that's what we are actually doing. Whenever there is a click, we're actually calling this add task button. Once there is this add task button, we actually say set input value to this particular thing. So now we have these two different elements, which is nothing but reload it, any kind of anything, click it, warning, uncaught error, expected string, error occur in strict mode. Okay, let's try to run the code again. Imperative, we have these things. Okay, this is nothing but we add the elements properly. There's a function list, function props, add everything. Okay, fine. Now we need to actually refactor our code a bit, which is nothing but we need to divide this entire code into different components, which is nothing but we'll say, or we'll create a one simple thing known as components. So I'll go to this assets, no, not assets, but I'll say in this src only I'll create one component, one folder known as components, where inside this component I'll create a file known as input box.jsx, and also I'll create todo.jsx, and also I'll create lists.jsx. So inside this input box JSS, I'll say rfc, where I'll say input box. So in the place of this particular input box, I'll copy this code from app.js, go to app.js, where we have this entire element, this entire thing. I'll cut it. And I'll paste it here. Similarly, go to this app.js, copy this list element. So I've created these components, that's why I'm removing the code and created these new components. I'll say RFC, I'll say lists. So instead of this given particular thing, I'll paste it. List is one such a prop. Now in this to do, we actually say this particular thing, RFC to do, and go to this app.js where we have our entire code, this entire code, sorry, where we have this entire code. Instead, I'll go to this to do application, remove this, I'll paste it instead of, oh sorry, where we have to do application, remove this entire code. This is nothing but refactoring our code. Remove it, paste the code. Give me a minute. So we'll say to do, everything is fine. We are actually exporting it. Yeah, everything is fine. Now in this given particular to do, we need to actually import them as it is. It's nothing but import these input box element, input box, or I'll say instead of writing this, go to your particular component in the to do. So we are actually, you need to import these two input box and list components into this particular thing, where I'll say is import it. We have imported it successfully, which is nothing but at this below component, I'll press control space, rest, and I enter. Oh, sorry, list. So it is also a lists component, yes. So yes, we have imported them successfully, and finally we need to say written, where we actually use these elements which are known as React fragments, and inside this I'll upload this to do thing. That's it. But first, before doing this, so to do components, yes, we are importing them. So in this given application, it's to do, and yes, now let's check it. It says not defined. Go to this thing, list. It's lists. Sorry, it's lists. It's lists. Now go back, run the code. What is the problem? The list component, where the to do component has all of these lists item. We have task array set up to it, and in the input box we have all these elements. Yes, and inside this app element we have to do element, where we are actually getting this to do thing component. Yeah, the to do has all of these things. Let's try to run the code a bit more. And main.js, it's app.render. Everything is fine. So let's cut it, run the code again. So let's close this code. Okay, is there anything error that we faced? Let's check it. F12 element is no error. React.js expected string class main.js6. Okay, is there anything that we messed up? Uncaught error, element type is invalid. So class got object. Problems, no problems, terminal. Okay, let's check these components. Is there anything that we missed? this is list component. We're actually getting this task array in the form of props, so we got it. And this todo.jsx, where we have our entire code, this entire code, and yes, this todo has two input box elements. Okay. Okay, built-in HTML elements are represented as strings. Okay. Okay, we are trying to render the object itself. Okay, nothing has gone wrong at this point of time. Uncaught error. Everything is doing fine. It's a task array. No, render is already actually present here. This render is actually present here. So I think you need to remove the strict mode. Remove the strict mode. Check the code. Okay, anything wrong that we did till this point? So wrong, anything wrong? We figure it out, this particular thing, where we have to do, where we have let's check the code again. Okay, there is no problem. Go to the studio where we have this thing. We have updated all of these things, input box and list, react. Okay. We need to remove this set value here. So I think run the code. Okay. The studio is looking fine. The studio is looking fine. This is the input value that we are getting it from this even particular thing. Add task. This add task is actually called. Then we are actually sending this particular thing into this form of props. Okay, sorry. Input value. We need to actually use it. And are there any changes? New task array. So we are actually getting the input value from this particular, this input box element. So that's why I have added this input value. So Now I'll say include this input element. Let's figure out, is there any mistake that we did in this input box element itself. So go to top, we have this thing set dot input value, set input value, it is initially this particular thing string, and then put add task set value, or else I need to change the value, add child task, and also I'll say on click child task, no, still not solved. I did everything right, but what is this error that is actually showing? Put and add child task. Finally, we have our list element. Is there anything that is problem that happens in the list? Let's equal to the value of props. This thing. Everything is good. By the way, it's not. Wait a minute. Let's try to run the code or rerun the code. Once is the one thing that I did. Instead of this components, I'll create to do. Where I'll include this thing inside it. Move. Instead of after this npm run dev, run the code. Okay. Okay, and it's not re-rendering. There's just some sort of an error, but I made sure everything is fine. Is this problem with my code or this problem with the thing? Warning, but uncaught error. Element type is invalid. Expected string or a class or a function, but got an object. Created functions. Error boundaries. Okay. React DOM, and React DOM. But got an object. Okay. Is there anything that we actually sending wrong? Let's do. We are getting this input value, or we are actually converting this thing to input value, and we are actually console.log. Let's check input value. Go here, reload the page. When console log is not telling this thing. Okay, What is this input value? Okay, input value is nothing, we haven't given it yet. So input box, change handle input, spellings are correct. What is this props that I'm getting here? Console log props, find out where this entire thing is going wrong. Is this problem with my console itself? Maybe. Function to your state, we are actually sending this scary, it's fine. Output is also fine. This terminal is also fine. Render is I didn't. Okay. I think there might be problem with my console itself. So yeah. So any which way, I'll even send you this code. Error is occurred in the strict mode component. Consider adding error boundary to your tree. Customize handling behaviors. I have added the strict mode thing. Function main.js. Strict mode is actually enabled. Run the code again. There is this warning. Remove this warning. Ungot element type is invalid. Ungot object at which strict boundary. This error boundary. Okay. I think my particular machine is not in good phase. That's why I'm getting this unnecessary errors. But anyway, what we have did is entirely correct. Anyway, I'll send this code in GitHub itself. So let me figure it out what exactly happened with my machine. This thing is React components. Oh, loading the React, troubleshooting. Fine, let's figure out if there's a problem with my code or the machine. It is still loading this thing. I think some problem with the element itself. It's not rendering itself. Why it is not rendering? Is to do that we are actually sending correct. There is a problem with the machine itself. So okay. No, it is actually ask ChatGPT. the problem is with my machine, because I've seen this thing, this component is one such a thing where it is not giving me or not reloading this particular thing. It is nothing but when there is a problem with the machine itself, then it stops rendering. So that is a problem from my machine, but not with my code. My code is perfectly alright. Perfectly alright. It is still loading. Refresh and see whether this works or not. I don't know why my machine is like working like this in these given days. But I'll finish out this given particular thing. But if you observe this particular code, where we are actually trying to send the data from this particular point, where I'll say, yeah, where I'll say this from this particular thing, we are actually trying to send data from this particular element to this particular element. To be more precise, that's what is actually happening. We're actually trying to send data from input box element to list element, which is nothing but whenever there is a click event that actually happens on this input box element or component, we are actually sending this data to this task array, where here the task array is getting updated and the task array is actually sent to the list. This is the entire flow of the code that actually happening here, where input box, don't worry about the machine thing, but let's follow this code, which is nothing but when there is this particular on click event actually happens, then eventually it is nothing but this on click event is actually calling this given function. In this given function, if you observe, we are using this given function, add task, that is actually present inside this particular to do application or to do component, where we are calling it with this input value, with the input value of ours, Now in this given particular add task, where we are actually creating or using the same input value here, updating our array, and we are actually assigning this new array to this task array, and this task array is actually utilized here to render the things, using as the prop. So this is the structure that we are actually following upon. But if you observe, there is no chance of communication between any two child components. And the one thing that I just want to mention here is that, I'll write it in comments, box, yeah, sorry. The thing is, whenever we are actually communicating with child elements, we will use props to send the data from parent to child. Similarly, whenever we want to have communication, whenever we want to have communications, then from, to be more precise, communications from child to parent, then we need to follow, or we need to send a function to the parent itself, where parent creates, or parent will use the result of the function and update the state variable that it have. So these are the two types of communication that we actually follow. But the one important thing is, in React we don't have the thing known as child to child communication, which is, here we need to communicate with sibling elements through parents, to parent component only. As in React we only have a tree structure of representation between child and parent. So that's why whenever we need to actually pass this any kind of a data, we actually pass it to the parent. Parent will update it, and then we actually update the list. So that's how that thing actually happens. It is not like we actually do this process of communicating between two child sibling elements. And also I just want everyone to download this one particular extension which is known as React Dev Tools. So open it. Yeah, go to this Chrome extension. So I already have this thing on my Chrome, so you also actually include this particular Chrome extension into your particular thing. So once it is included, for any given React application, open it, it actually shows these details. But this is, or the code which I am running here is currently a machine problem, so that's why I am actually getting these kind of loading React tree element. But in your machines everything would work completely fine. Everything would work completely fine. Okay, uncaught reference error. This is completely a machine fault. Yes. Sir, by importing files in other child components can't be communicating by passing props? No. Here if you observe this file structure, where in to do we have our input element and list element. Inside to do we have input element and list element, which is nothing but this to do is one such an element. It is a parent element, where parent element have child element, like this given particular thing. Now, so if you observe input box, you don't see the to do element. You don't see any kind of an import here, importing to do. Similarly, if I close all of these things, yes. Similarly, we have this list thing where we are actually sending these props, where we are actually sending these kind of a props here. So at this point of time, when props are being sent in this list component, so there is no import of to do. These input box and list both are imported inside of this particular components. So that's the thing that actually happens. Export default app without destructuring. Okay. And the code, yes, still it is not rendering. Okay, still it is not rendering. Yeah, that's actually a machine fault. They were occurred in to do sync considering the error boundary. Use state is not defined. To do, go to do. Okay, this is one thing. So we'll say import use state from React. So other things, uncaught reference error. Use state is not defined. Where? App.js use state. So first then, okay, use state. This doesn't require use state. Yeah, everything is now working. Yeah, everything is now working. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for debugging. Thank you for debugging, Pawan Kumar. That's one small mistake I made. I'm sorry. So thank you for debugging. Like we have restructured the thing. Instead, I've thought of like removing. We have included these previous elements in app.jsx. down we have included many elements like input box, list and other things previously, but I forgot to remove it, so that is the problem. Thank you. So wait a minute. Thank you for debugging, by the way. How to edit the text? NxtWave boys, what does it even mean? Like to communicate with sibling elements like listener is importing this is it can communicate, sir. Mahesh, I couldn't understand your question. Like to communicate with sibling elements like list.jsx, import or importing in input box.jsx like this. Is my voice audible? Like, is my voice audible? Is my voice audible, everyone? I think. Hello. 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 Uh, After adding new to do, I want to edit that new edit. I'm sorry. Yes, Mahesh. Child components cannot communicate in React. Volume is too high. Volume is increased. Volume is increased. Volume is full. I'm talking at my loudest. I mean, at my most thing. By importing child component and another child component, then communication will actually happen. Uh, okay. Mahesh is telling that. Mahesh is telling that, sir, if we import list component into this child component, now we have to understand this one thing, Mahesh. When I are importing these things, we are actually using them components. We are actually using them as a components to return as an HTML element. So how the communication is being established is that if you observe this input box, it is nothing but the input box is one such an element that need to talk to the parent itself. For that I have added this one add task is one such a function. Coming to the list, it is an array, that is I am sending as a prop, because task array is one such a state variable that is actually there with the parent. So we are actually sending them to children element as a prop. That is a form of communication. Similarly, to communicate to the parent element, we are actually using the props with this particular add task function itself. Similarly, as if I include them or import this list element into this input box element, then communication doesn't happen. Because if you observe, the parent and child has a relationship. That parent node and children node has these relationships, right? But there is no such kind of a relationship node that exists in this particular thing, because in the virtual DOM that is actually being created by the React itself, the DOM will look like this, but there will be no such link between two siblings. The only link between two siblings is through the particular parent element. That's why we need to communicate in this given format. So this is the one format, because the structure of this data, or I can say that the data structure that is implemented to store these things is a tree format. That's why we need to go to this node and communicate it and go to this node. The input box, after making any changes and submitting or clicking on add to task, we actually go to do task or do array. We actually go to this task array, we update it. After that updating it, this to do or element will actually give this new task array to this list element. This is the entire thing or entire functionality that actually goes beyond. Let's say if we click on go to gym, yeah, click on go to gym and add task, it is adding. So let's say go to gym again, create an add task. So that's why I am not dealing with this thing. Achha, by using edit button, I want to edit new to do, explain. Okay. Instead, I try to implement this one thing. Go to this code and check whether there is any kind of an error still remaining. Okay, there is this warning thing. There is this warning thing that each child in the list should have a prop name as key. For which I'll go to this list element where each child, it is nothing but here should have their prop as key. So that's why I'll mention as idx. So where this list item, like every list item should have an idx. Which is nothing but every list item will be created with this particular thing id. So we'll run the code. No errors, no warnings. No errors, no warnings. So go to gym, go to go to gym again, like this it actually happens. So yeah, now let's say NxtWave boys is asking us, sir, by using edit button I want to edit new to do, which is nothing but NxtWave boys, I'll implement this delete feature, which is nothing but whenever, wait a minute, I click on this given particular element, list element, I want them to be deleted. I want them to be deleted. Now tell me, how can I implement that delete thing? I am actually on this code. List item, which is nothing but whenever there is an on click event on any of these things, on click event that happens anything or on this li element, I'll say console.log item, or I'll say element with id is deleted. id is deleted, which is nothing but, let's try and check whether this code is actually working. So which is nothing but, if I click on it, there is this reference error id, oh sorry, it's not id, idx, sorry, done the code. Go to gym. Now if I click on it, it is selling the element with 0 id. Let's say go to gym again, click on it. If I click on it, yes, element with id 1 is deleted. Instead with that would be great. So let's say go to gym, let's check whether this functionality is getting implemented or not. If I click on this li thing, it should get deleted. So now how can I implement this simple given delete element? Any clues? Anyone want to try it, or anyone want to tell me how do we include it? Yes, using filter. Shivashankar, Misala Vamshi, by using callback functions from list to to do. Okay, from list to do, Pavan Kumar, we can implement this this particular thing. Now whenever we need to handle this particular thing of delete, I'll remove this console log is just for my confirmation. So let's go ahead. Whenever there is an on click event, then we need to actually call a function handle delete, or I'll say handle delete. This handle delete, sorry, let's say idx. So I'll be passing with this given idx whenever there is a handle click. So it is nothing but, I'll write a callback function, const handle delete, where, wait, this particular const delete I'll be writing inside this to do element. So here this handle delete, or even this task array, is I am getting from this to do element. That's why I'll create this particular thing, add task. Similarly, I'll create this handle delete as a prop inside this to do element. So which is nothing but, I'll say constant handle delete. I'll create a small function. I'll create this very small function. Let's say const filtered data, filtered array, or filtered task. Filtered task, I'll say tasks array dot filter, where this say I'll write this filter function where I'll say this task comma idx, or I'll say instead of telling this idx I'll write it here as cidx. Cidx would be fine. That I just want to remove it, so I'll say return. This filter function actually removes the items. I think filter where this given method returns element of array to meet the condition specified in the callback function. So I'm going to write a given condition, which is nothing but this cidx should not equals to this given value of this idx, this idx, this idx, where I'll be getting the idx, because if you go and see this list item, so for this given particular idx element that we are actually sending it to this particular handle delete, we are utilizing them here itself. So for that same idx I'm actually filtering them, and whenever this particular return function is actually the value becomes the true, I'll do this one single step, okay, one single thing, which I'll say set tasks or set task array to be this filtered tasks, this filtered task. So the same thing here, whenever we need to add task, we have created new array and we added this new task to this new array, and we have making this a new array value actually equal to this task array. Similarly, the same step actually been followed here, which is nothing but I have created a filter task where here we are getting an array as an output, once this output has been got, and this is actually passed to this set task array, where now your task array value is nothing but your filtered tasks, So the same thing here that we have done the same step, here also we are doing the same step. So now let's go, let's recap it. Let's say go to gym sorry, let's say go to gym again, click on it. Let's say if I say click on this, go to gym again. Okay, there is this handle defined, delete is not defined. Oh, I haven't, sorry. I haven't implemented or imported it here, handle delete from the props. So this list I'm getting it from here. So task array, where I'll say handle delete should be equals to this particular thing known as handle delete. So I'm sending the task array and handle delete functions to this given particular list item. So wait, that's why it is showing me the error. Now let's try it. Go click it and again click on it. Yes, we are actually deleting it. So this is how we have implemented this delete thing. Now NxtWave boys want to have this particular thing known as an edit function. So we have created a to-do application that where we can click on this given particular task, add task. We are adding this particular thing onto the element into the task array itself. But again, if we click on the same task that has added newly onto this array, we are actually deleting it. Now, how do we edit these things? This is the one interesting thing. A small logic, not a complicated logic, a very small logic. So I think this would be giving as your home assignment. So I'll be anyway sharing this particular code. So try to contribute to this given particular repo that I'll be sharing you this evening, and create a edit function. Tomorrow we'll see what is the best edit function that the people has created. So till this point, anyone has any kind of a doubt? Till this point, anyone has kind of any doubt? Any kind of any doubts, you can ask me. Clear. Um, No, sir. Okay. Okay, okay. No, sir. No. Fine. Yes, Christopher, we can add a delete button for every list item and we can delete it. Yes, that is also is possible. Please push your code and then send to us. Yes, I'll definitely do that. I'll just push the code and I'll send it to you. Don't worry. By this end of the day, I'll do it. By this end of the day, I'll do it. So this is how the thing actually works. So, okay, but is this code available for us? Yes, Pawan Kumar, it is actually available for us. It is actually available for you. I mean, sorry. Okay, but oh, okay, I'll do this thing. I'll end my session of this day for this given point of time. Because if I start the use effect, I actually want to deal the 6 use cases that use effect deals with. So tomorrow we'll see about use effect and React router. React router, yes, we'll see React router. So that's it for this session. If you have any kind of a doubt, you can ask me. If you have any kind of a doubt, you can ask me. Otherwise, you can leave the session. Because if I start use effect hooks at this given point of time, it will take another 1.5 hours, or at least 1 hour at least, to get understanding what is the intuition of use effect, how it is used, and other stuff. Sir, when you will explain class components? Actually, in this particular thing, okay. Many questions. Class components, actually, according to your thing, class components is not actually present. Class component is not actually present, so that's why it is not, suggested to teach the class components. But if any which way, if I got the chance, I'll do it. But any which way, everyone are using functional components, so relax. Sai Pavan is actually asking that how IDX is increased. How IDX is increased, which is nothing but for every new render, that ID value will be automatically incremented. To be more precise, when there is this state update actually happens, then it is nothing but the ID value will automatically incremented. The ID value or the key value will be automatically incremented. To be more precise, key value is automatically incremented for any given list item by the React itself. So that's how this thing is actually happening. Why we use key, sir? That's a very good question. It is nothing but, let's say in your to-do list, in order to specifically tell that given particular, let's say in your to-do list we have 10 elements of same value: go to gym, go to gym, go to gym, go to gym, go to gym. How can we guess which go to gym is actually the thing that we want to edit or we want to delete? How can we get that one single element out of these all 10 elements? So in order to specify uniquely, in order to identify uniquely, we have this key prompt for any given list item. So can you tell me what concepts we are going to learn? React hooks, sir. Use effect, use reducer, use ref, and many more, I can say, because use reducer, use effect, use ref takes a lot of time to discuss. The difference between functional component and, sir, in our project we can use context. Sorry, I didn't get Pawan Kumar. IDX is, you can give IDX values as an some ID value, ID or some other thing. I have given this IDX. IDX is nothing but index. So that's what it is meant by. Sir, can we use UID given to this or to-do list? If yes, you can use. Not exactly, Mahesh. There is a difference between Redux and context. There is a difference between Redux and context. So, sir, can you tell me what we are going to? Okay, sir, could you please explain what is the difference between functional component and class component? Okay, class component is where we actually derive the objects and we then actually represent them objects onto the screen itself. So class structure is majorly used to represent or to create any kind of an object. But coming to this functional, where JavaScript has this innate behavior, we can return the object itself. So instead of writing the classes, we can also write this particular thing known as functions. That's why it has been, there is a lot of transition between class components and functional components, because functional components are much more easier to create more complex things than normal functional things. Sorry, normal class things. Uh, Redux is most advanced. Yes, Redux is most advanced thing. Yes. So what are meant by React? React hooks. Krishna Pavani, I'll explain this. Whenever we are going to discuss about this particular thing known as use effect. Once we finished it, and once we go, before we go into this concept of React router, that the time that I'll explain this entire hook concept. Why it is called a hook? What are the different hooks that are actually present? And why use state and this use effect are also called as hooks. So it's not a small topic. It's a very, very, very big topic. Any kind of doubts? If no doubts, you can leave. If no doubts, you can leave. If no doubts, you can leave. So yeah, that's it for the session. We'll meet you in tomorrow's session. Thank you all. If you have any doubts, reach out to our team. They'll respond to you.